Well, so much has already been said about this game, as it's certainly one of the most beloved and revered games of the 16-bit era. It's easily near the top of everyone's list of best Final Fantasy game, best Super Nintendo game, best RPG, or maybe even best video game of all time. Now, for me to tell you my thoughts about it in just a few minutes is truly a challenge, when it could easily take hours. And I mean like Ken Burns documentary hours. But I guess YouTube certainly isn't the place to take on such an awesome dream project, so I'll do my best with what time I have. Oh man, I've wasted precious seconds even talking about the time that I have. And even more saying that. Okay, on with it. This is Final Fantasy III on the Super Nintendo, or in the grand scheme of the series, Final Fantasy VI. So for a little insight on why I like this game, here's a little personal backstory to give you an idea of my RPG history. In the 90s, I certainly played my fair share of Final Fantasy I and the Dragon Warrior games on the NES, but I vividly remember my first experience with a 16-bit Final Fantasy. The Super Nintendo was still in its infancy, and my friends and I rented a console from a local video store, along with Super Mario World and Final Fantasy II. Now, Super Mario World was amazing and all, but as day progressed into night, my friends and I were quickly sucked into the awe-inspiring Final Fantasy universe before us, and I was literally glued to the controller up until the last minute before I had to return the game to the video store. So needless to say, it was one of the first games I bought after becoming the gleeful owner of a Super Nintendo myself, and it changed my video game life forever. And needless to say, I bought Final Fantasy III on the day of its release. And I also remember it was definitely the most expensive video game I had ever seen, with a hefty price tag of $80. But even if it had been 80,000 bajillion dollars, it would have still been worth it. For its time, this was easily one of the most epic and immersive video game experiences ever. The core gameplay elements hadn't changed much since Final Fantasy II, and they really didn't need to, as developer Squaresoft basically refined every element of this entry of the series to near perfection. So here's the part where I could easily ramble on about the intricacies of the engrossing, branching storylines, the truly memorable soundtrack, the stunning graphics, the wealth of locales and characters, or how much of a badass Sabin is, but I'll save my breath. Let's keep it simple now, as I'm not afraid to say that this game is a 16-bit masterpiece that set a very high bar for any RPG to follow it, and that few have even come close to its same level of quality. So if you haven't played through this game before, RPG fan or not, you really should. For mostly nostalgic reasons, the Super Nintendo version happens to be my format of choice, but there's also great ports for the PlayStation when it was included with the Final Fantasy Anthology, and for the Game Boy Advance, where it was finally released in the US with its official title, Final Fantasy VI. Alright, so that's enough of me talking about this game, as I think I'll be spending the next 30 hours playing it again, and I hope that watching this inspired a few people to do the same thing.